Story time on how my babysitter used a teddy bear to spy on me while I changed. Okay, so boom. My parents worked a lot and they both worked night shifts. My dad would come home first at like 11 p.m. and then my mom would usually come around 1 a.m. My parents didn't want me to be home alone for too long, so I would have a babysitter from 3 when I would get off of school till 11 when my dad came home. By the way, I'm 12 and the babysitter that we're going to be talking about is 19. So I usually stayed with my older cousin till my dad came home, but my cousin and her family moved. So my parents were forced to get me an actual babysitter. So like a week into me dealing with this new babysitter, one night I was changing and my babysitter tried to open the door, but it was locked. I told her that I was changing, but she told me that I have to leave my door unlocked just in case something happens. I only believed her because my parents had a similar rule. But eventually, my babysitter was always walking into me accidentally while I changed. I was getting annoyed, so I had to think of something to stop her. My babysitter kept accidentally walking in on me while I was changing. So to stop her, after I would get out the shower, I would literally go to her and say, "Hey, I'm in my room changing. I'll be right back. Please don't come in." So she had no choice but to stop accidentally seeing me. Well, that stopped her for a week, and then she got me a teddy bear. I was excited because it was a pretty big bear and it was super soft. She came in my room with me and said she got the perfect spot for the bear. And I was like, okay, cool. Y'all, she put it right on my dresser, front and center, great view to see everything. And ever since then, she never came back into my room. Y'all, the things I did in my room, like dancing with no clothes on, acting like I was Beyonce on stage, shaking my little booty with barely any clothes on. And little did I know she was downstairs watching the whole thing, cause the camera was in the teddy bear's eyes. She gave me a teddy bear with camera eyes and put it on my dresser. I, of course, didn't notice that there was actually cameras in the eyes of the teddy bear. Well, one day my mom was cleaning my room and she asked me where did I get this bear from? And I told her that my babysitter got it for me. And my mom was like, oh, okay. For some reason, my mom was creeped out about the bear and she ended up putting it in the washroom to clean it later. That same night, before I even got a hello, my babysitter said, "Why'd you move the bear?" And I looked at her and said, "How did you even know the bear was moved?" She kind of stumbled on her words, but then she told me that my mom told her. I obviously fell for it and was like, oh yeah, she put it in the washroom to clean later. Y'all, my babysitter went to the washroom and took the bear and she placed it back on the dresser at the same spot. And she told me to tell my mom that we washed the bear together. I really didn't care, so I was just like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I went about my day. This is where it gets real. After my mom moved the teddy bear, my babysitter went in and moved it back. The next day, it was Saturday, so my mom was off. My mom came in my room and saw the teddy bear and asked me why I brought it back up. So I said, honestly, Mom, the babysitter put it back up. She was so sad that you moved it. You should have never even told her. And my mom just looked at me confused and was like, what do you mean? I didn't tell her I moved the bear. And I said, of course you did, Mom. You probably just forgot. Because before she even walked through those doors, she asked me why I moved the bear. My mom's eyes opened wide and she froze. My mom took her phone out and opened a flash and shined it into the bear's eyes. And then she screamed, "Oh my gosh," and then grabbed the teddy bear and ran to her room. There the camera was. My mom called the cops and then the cops went to my babysitter's house like 15 minutes away. And my babysitter's parents, not knowing what's going on, let the cops in. Y'all, my mom grabbed the teddy bear and ran to her room and called the cops. The cops went to my babysitter's house and her parents let them in. So the cops went into my babysitter's room and then confiscated the laptop. Y'all, she had videos of me and about 5 other girls that she babysat for. And she was recording all of us naked. And we're all minors. She, of course, went to jail and my parents refused to hire anyone to babysit me anymore. They actually prefer a family member or they just leave me home, to be honest. And my parents actually didn't tell me what happened until I got older, which I'm now 18, because they didn't want me to feel so violated. So they handled it all without me knowing, which I'm grateful for because I probably would have had a mental breakdown if my mom really told me what happened at that very moment. So anyways, be careful who you leave alone with your kids, guys. Story time on how me and my mom walked in on my sister sleeping with my stepdad. Okay, so boom. This was back in 2017. So I was 17 and my sister was 20 and my stepdad was 32. So when I was 16, my sister and I were introduced by my mom to my stepdad. And right off the bat, my sister was very flirty with him. I would always catch them doing things like my sister rubbing my stepdad's muscles and him just standing there loving it. I would try to tell my mom, but she would always tell me that there brothers just getting along and that they're basically father and daughter. Anyways, this day it was my birthday and me and my mom were gonna have a girls' day. So that meant that my sister and my stepdad were going to be all alone. My mom and I told them that we would be back around 10. So we go to a store to shop, but long story short, I fell and hurt my foot, so we had to go back early. As soon as we get into the house, we hear moaning. I immediately looked at my mom and told her, I told you so. As soon as I said that, my mom ran upstairs like the NBA. We came home early and immediately heard moaning. I looked at my mom and said, I told you so. As soon as I said that, my mom ran upstairs like she was a track star. She's a runner, she's a track star. Anyways, I ran after my mom and we opened the door together and we see my sister naked with my stepdad. My sister immediately started crying and my mom was literally beating my stepdad. And me, oh yeah, I was just laughing. Like, that was not shocking at all. Like, I literally saw it coming. After my mom was done beating my stepdad's ass, he was begging her for forgiveness. And y'all, she forgave him. I was so mad that I called the cops. But then the cops told me that it wasn't an emergency, so they hung up on me. So I was even more fed up. So I decided that I was going to beat my stepdad's ass, but 100 times worse than my mom did. Then I did it to my sister, and it gets worse. I was beating my stepdad's ass, and then I was beating my sister's ass. Because I was so mad that my mom literally forgave this man for sleeping with her daughter. And my sister was literally always trying to sleep with my stepdad. Like she was sick. They all were sick. So I called my biological dad and I told him everything. Then he came over and then he gave my stepdad a real ass whooping. My sister actually lost her V card to my stepdad. And y'all, she got pregnant. I didn't want anything to do with that baby and no one else in the family wanted anything to do with that baby. So my sister ended up giving the baby up for adoption. And shortly after she gave birth, she went to jail, as she should, where she belongs. And so does my stepdad. Look, y'all, not all family is good family. They could be crazy and nasty. Goodbye. Story time on how I went on a Tinder date and my date tried to kill me. This story gets straight to the point, so let's get into it. Okay, so boom. I was 16 years old and I was lonely. All my friends had boyfriends, so I was always left out. But I didn't like anyone from school, so I went crazy on Tinder. Me and this guy both swiped, so we started talking. And after 2 weeks, he asked to meet up and go on a date. 2 weeks was a little fast, but again, I was lonely and I really wanted a stupid boyfriend. Don't be like me, y'all. So yeah, I went on the date and we met at a restaurant. And you guessed it, he was catfish. His picture, he was a tall, muscular guy. 6'3" with Rico Suave hair. But in person, he was bald, fat, and he was short. I was so pissed, I just wanted to turn around and leave, but he stood up to greet me, so I didn't want to be rude, so I just told myself I'll get a free meal. Y'all, during the day, I found out he was 40. I found out he was 40 and he was catfished. I had to get out of there. After dinner, I told him it was nice meeting him and that I was going to text him once I got home. But of course, I was just going to block him. But that's none of his business. Anyways, he asked me if I wanted him to walk me to my car. But I said, no, that's fine. At this point, I was being very standoffish because it was like, dude, get away from me. And I think he noticed. It was pretty late at night, probably like 10 p.m. So when we left the restaurant, no one was really around. At this point, I'm kind of getting a little scared, so I kind of walked to my car a little quickly, about to open my door. And this guy comes out of nowhere right behind me and covers me with his arms and squeezes me. He covers my mouth so I wouldn't scream, and he whispered in my ear saying I was leaving with him whether I liked it or not. I tried to wiggle myself out, but I couldn't. He was too strong. And things got real. He comes up behind me and squeezes me with his arms and covers my mouth so I wouldn't scream. I tried to wiggle my way out, but I couldn't. He was too strong. But since his arms was around my upper body and my mouth, my hand where I was holding the keys was free, but my other arm was being squeezed by him. Thank God, all I needed was that one arm. And thank God I had pepper spray attached to my keys. So I took my pepper spray, sprayed him in his eyes, and he screamed. He let me go, and that's when I took my purse to reach for my taser. And yes, I tased him. Mama ain't raised no fool. I ran to my car, opened the door and got home immediately. By the time I pulled out the parking lot, he was still on the floor. I got home and told my parents everything. They called the cops to the restaurant. He was gone by the time they got there. I just thank God he didn't know anything about me. Not my home, not my school or personal life. All he knew was my first name. So if you're dating online, be careful. Story time on how my cousin tried to sexually assault me. Okay, y'all, so boom. I went to Mexico for the summer because my parents wanted me to meet my grandparents. I went there with my brother so I wasn't alone. And throughout our time there, me and my brother met my grandparents and other people in our family. A month into my visit, I met my cousin Josh. That's not his real name, but we'll just call him Josh. When I first met him, Josh was super nice to both me and my brother. Everything was fine, and he even stayed with us a couple weeks until something happened. One day when I was in my room that I was staying at, I was just minding my business playing Minecraft. Now, my room had no doors because they were working on getting new doors. And let me tell you guys that I was 8 years old and he was a teenager. He came in my room and I didn't think anything of it. He was just basically watching me play Minecraft. But then he came up to me and sat on my bed and then got on top of me. He came into my room and started watching me play Minecraft. But then he came to my bed and got on top of me. I was laying down on my stomach, so to give you a visual, he was basically on my back, like my butt. Then he tried to pull my shorts down and told me, I'll let you keep playing Minecraft if you let me touch your ass. Let me remind you guys that I'm 8 years old and this guy's a teenager. I didn't really understand what was going on, but I just pushed him off and said, I don't really want to play anymore. Then I threw the phone and I left. I felt weird after, but I didn't know why. Him going and laying on me and touching on me like that, I was just uncomfortable. And I know things could have gotten bad and even worse if there were doors. I kept this in for 2 years, so I think it's time to tell everyone now. Remember, it's never okay for anybody.
You know, I've been in bad situations before, but never anything like this. Here's some brief context. About 2 weeks ago, I was running dangerously low on funds. I guess the demand for shady hitmen wasn't exactly at an all-time high. I was willing to take any job that was less difficult than assassinating the president. I got exactly what I wanted about a week after the eviction notice came. $20,000, one guy, and as far as I could tell, no baggage attached. It was just some random asshole. Or at least, that's how they presented it to me. Now, the person or people who had sent me this offer seemed a bit more secretive than the usual customer. I mean, I usually expected a fake name at the very least, but these guys didn't even offer an alias. Whatever, I thought. It is what it is, right? They didn't seem to have a name for their target either, simply referring to him as the Freak. It was weird, to say the least. But beggars can't be choosers. They wired me $10,000 up front, and the rest would come after I'd finished the job. Those were the conditions, anyways. I started driving out to the address they'd given me, where the target was supposed to be. They told me that I should get there by midnight, so I arrived around 10 p.m. in order to set up. My loadout was a bit heavier than usual. I was thinking that this guy had to be armed and trained or something, since they were willing to pay me a shitload. I was packing a silenced Beretta, and a fully loaded CZ-75, a Remington 870, a scoped M114, a butterfly knife, and some brass knuckles, if it had to come to close quarters. Well, that wasn't it. There was one last thing that I'd brought with me. It was a grenade. Now, I didn't think I'd actually need it, and I didn't really want to use it. It was just in case shit went beyond south. I hid myself as best I could in the darkness in the dingy factory and waited until midnight. At about 12:11, the rusty doors flung open, and I watched through my scope as an abnormally tall figure wearing a windbreaker and slacks burst in. From the description they gave me, this was definitely the guy. I mean, how many people are 6'10"? The thing is, he was moving way too fast for me to get a clean shot, and I didn't want to risk blowing my position. In fact, he was sprinting, for whatever reason. However, he did appear to be unarmed, so I let myself relax a bit. I lost him when he ran into the door to my left. Moving quickly, I pulled out my Beretta, stuck the CZ-75 into my holster and followed him. The place that we'd entered was pitch black, but I'd planned for that. I put on a pair of night vision goggles and started traversing around the area. It appeared that he'd led me into a hallway. However, I couldn't find the guy. This is when the first peculiar thought struck me. How the hell was he seeing anything in here? My musing was cut short when I heard a shrill scream coming from somewhere at the end of the hall. Carefully, I maneuvered my way down there and peeked down both the left and right branched corridors. The screaming was definitely coming from a room to the left. As I got about halfway there, I just stopped suddenly. I froze in my steps. What the hell? It was in that moment when a body came flying out of the room. I nearly shouted out of shock, but managed to control myself. I watched as what appeared to be a 20-something male hit the wall just in front of me and bounced off, face planting hard onto the concrete. Oh, it made me sick, squishing noise as it did. Getting a better view of the body, I noticed that one of the legs seemed to be crumpled, like the Terminator himself had grabbed onto him and squeezed hard. I could hear whatever had done this starting to back out into the hallway. Feeling extremely disturbed and somewhat unprepared, I silently backed out into the main entrance hall. From there, I trained the CZ directly on the intersecting corridors and waited. I mean, there was no way he could see me, right? My heart skipped a beat with nearly every step the guy took. He was getting closer. 3 more steps. 2. As soon as he came into my view, I emptied my entire clip. My accuracy has always been pretty decent, so I'd say more than half of them hit. However, he was still standing. And not just that, he barely even flinched. That's when I got a closer look at his face. All I can say is that nobody looks like that. In fact, nothing should look like what I was staring down in that dark hallway. His face was incomprehensible. Not like the conventional demon or mutant that you see on the movies. It was something that a human brain wasn't meant to come face to face with. It didn't belong in our plane of existence. The eyes were constantly changing and morphing. It was as if the 2 irises both shared one large, empty pupil. The mouth, if you could call it that, was twisted into a grin that seemed to wrap around its entire head. Not just ear to ear, those were the only distinguishing features. The rest of the skin of its face seemed to be constantly shifting. Sometimes it would be smooth, and sometimes it would look as if hundreds of tiny worms were crawling under it. The thing looked directly at me and let out this deep, throaty laugh that seemed to reverberate through the entire hall. I even had to quickly glance behind me because it sounded like it was coming from everywhere. I could barely think. I dropped the CZ and pulled the Beretta. I emptied 3 shots right into the head, but the monstrosity barely reacted. It just laughed louder. Obviously, this creature wasn't going down anytime soon. I bolted out of the hallway and back onto the main factory floor. My thoughts were a mess, but I managed to recall where I'd left the shotgun. I hastily made my way over there and picked it up. I nearly had a heart attack when I turned around and saw that the thing was staring right at me. It was still laughing. In addition, now drooling this black, thick-looking liquid. Some of it got onto my hand and instantly ate through my skin. I winced in agony before firing a shot right into its face. This time, it actually seemed to react. I noticed that the bullets had managed to pierce its skin, but only slightly. It stopped laughing, instead letting out a shrill, deafening shriek that nearly burst my eardrums. It grabbed my arm and tossed me some meters away. I landed hard on my shoulder, and I think I nearly broke it. However, I didn't have the luxury of letting it rest. I pumped the shotgun back and fired another shell directly into the creature's chest as it charged me. I couldn't move out of the way quick enough. The impact from the hit sent me flying about 10 feet back in the air. I landed awkwardly, feeling my ankle dislocate as I did. However, I was also fairly close to the bag where I was keeping the grenade. There was really only one option left here. I scrambled over to it and feverishly grabbed for the explosive. As I got my hand on it, I pulled the pin. I could already hear the creature coming back towards me. I turned around and rolled it towards the thing. I barely got behind a pillar in time for the explosion. I don't think the sound that it let out will ever leave my mind. It wasn't just a shriek, not just a roar. It was as if all the air around me was being sucked into the thing's giant mouth and being distorted in some kind of otherworldly bellow. I crawled out from behind the pillar to see the thing stumbling around. It was missing a leg now, but instead of bones sticking out, there was some kind of dark, shiny appendage squirming out of its severed limb. Taking no chances, I emptied the rest of the shotgun rounds into the creature's head. However, it still wouldn't fucking die. It was injured as hell for sure, but it kept moving. Tired as hell and in pain, I stumbled over and watched the freakish entity climb up a wall and out a window. That was the last I saw of it. Immediately after, I packed up my things and got into my car, floored at home. It's been a few hours since. I'm sitting here, and still in absolute disbelief at the events that just transpired. I don't even want to begin to think what the hell that thing was. I tried contacting the people who had sent me after it in the first place, but they're giving me the silent treatment, of course. But there was something rather interesting that I saw on the news. It was a report about a murder that took place in an abandoned factory, the same one I was just in. Here's the kicker, though. The person that I saw get splattered against the wall was actually a wanted enforcer for a local criminal gang. In fact, only a few days ago, another person had been murdered in a neighboring town. They searched his place, and they found staggering evidence that he was a contract killer, just like me. But this wasn't even the end of it. 5 hitmen, criminal enforcers, had been murdered in this last month, all at the same state where I was. The authorities were suspecting that these had to be linked. And I do recall hearing about them in some dark web circles a few weeks ago, but I didn't think anything of it. I just thought that they must have been incompetent. I also watched the police press conference where some journalist asked if this might be some rogue vigilante on the loose. No, the officer responded. The manner in which these men were getting killed indicates that we've got something else on our hands. It's too brutal, like the work of an absolute, unhinged psychopath. That thing is still alive, and if it comes after me again, I don't think I'm gonna get so lucky. Maybe I'll just hire someone else to try and kill it. Worth a shot.
Story time about how my family adopted me for the sickest reason ever. So I was 9 years old, and I started to wonder if I was getting too old to be adopted, and I started to feel really unwanted. Until this lovely, lovely Caucasian family came to adopt me. I had a new brother, they lived in the suburbs, everything was going good. Until one day after they showed me around the house, they said, all right, hop in the car, we're going to show you around the town. Now, as a 9-year-old, I genuinely don't really care what's around the town, but I did it anyway. After all, they were my new parents. So after we're driving for about 30 minutes, I noticed the area is starting to look more and more trashy. I was getting scared that they were going to drop me off and leave me abandoned somewhere. I didn't know what was going on. So we pulled up next to this corner store where this man is standing outside the convenience store. He walks up to the window, he talks to them a little bit, and he looks at me and says, hi. I said, hi? He's like, so we're going to be working together. Y'all, by working together, he meant he was going to be my... There was a lady who heard this and she was walking out of the convenience store. She ran up to the window with full concern and asked me how old I was. She took me out the car and later adopted me. Those people wanted me to pay off their credit card debt. Biggest wake-up call ever. Y'all, I'm not even gonna lie, I was a little bit on the whitewashed side, but it was only because of how society portrayed us if we acted the way we wanted to. So yeah, I acted everything but myself and I hung out with everybody but my people. So after white girl summer was over, school started up. And this new boy, Cameron, was coming to our school. He was definitely white and I was destined to get with him. I thought if I got with him, all my troubles would be gone away. And I would finally be seen the way that I want to. But that's not how it worked. Tell me why he noticed I was all up on his case. He invited me to his house because he wanted to get to know me. Y'all, I was geeking out. It was his birthday party, and when I tell you I was the only drop of color in there. So after we're partying and everything, he turns on some music and says, let's play Would You Rather. The first thing this dude says to his friend is, would you rather date a or someone who's 3 times your age? I was sick to my stomach and I was so embarrassed. Everyone bust out laughing. Story time about how my mom gave me up for adoption. Y'all let me know how y'all feel about this at the end. So my mom was from the old days and she was always taught to find a rich man. She could be the lady, blah, blah, play her part. So she did just that. Long story short, she popped up pregnant, which was me. But after I was born, my dad wanted a DNA test because he realized I looked absolutely nothing like him and did not trust. DNA test came back and you guessed it, I was not his. My mom actually reconnected with an old friend from her childhood and you know the rest. My mom's husband was really controlling and made her feel worthless. And the guy she reconnected with made her feel like a real person and like she was worth something. So that's why that happened. So once her husband at the time found out about all this, he gave her an ultimatum. You can stay here, stay stable, and give her up for adoption, or you can keep her, get out, and go find your own life and start from zero. Now, my mom was not educated. She never got a degree. She never had a job. She has no type of training for the real world. So she was faced with a hard decision. Take me and go struggle for years to make a way for both of us, or give me up and hopefully I get a family that knows how to take care of me properly. I don't know how to feel about this. Story time about how I had to send my dogs on my neighbors. I had to send them on my neighbors. You know why? Because they tried me. So just so y'all know, I am, and so are my two daughters, and they are the opposite. So one day my daughters were playing outside minding their little black business, and our neighbors pull up. So the woman goes inside of the house and the man stays outside staring at my children like they are some lost animals. So he goes, "What are you guys doing outside?" Mind you, I'm in the kitchen, but the window is raised so I can hear everything. So they answer him, "Oh, we're just playing it." Then he goes, "Man, you people really love being in the sun, don't you?" I had to pause my music and stop what I was doing to make sure he actually said that. My daughter then says, "I'm telling my mommy." This fool had the nerve to grab my child and tell her she ain't telling nobody nothing. This fool clearly didn't think I was listening. I walked out there with my ready to go K9. I said, "Let her go." He says, "Well, she tried to attack me." I'm like, "Something gonna attack you in a minute." He says, "If you can't control your daughter, then before you can finish, I'll let that dog go." Ironic how I let the dog on him. This story time is about the last time I saw my mother. This is sad, so go ahead and get your Kleenexes now. I was an only child and my mom was a single parent, and we lived in Georgia. She got this new job as a bank teller at this bank by our house. She was excited when she got the call and they confirmed that she got the job. Her plan was to work there long enough to eventually become a manager. After she got confirmation that she would be working there, we celebrated. So boom, first day comes around and she sits me on the couch and she tells me about life. She was just going on and on about how you can do and be whatever you want to be. It doesn't matter if you're a felon. It doesn't matter if you're smart. If you think you're not, it doesn't matter. She says, "I don't care if it's just me and you until the end of the world. We're going to be okay." In my head, I was like, blah, blah, blah. I was 11 at this time, just so you know. So yeah, she goes to work and I go to school. So after about fourth period, I heard the bell in my class, ding, and they called me to the office. I asked why I was in the office and everyone looked scared to tell me. They told me that there was a robbery at my mom's bank. And unfortunately, most people were, including my mom. I wish I cherished her more. Story time about how my psychotic grandma got my teacher fired. So this was a predominantly white school, and I believe my teacher was racist. So I'm going to name my teacher Mrs. Wilson. So Mrs. Wilson always made me sit at the back of the class, stand at the back of the line, and she never called on me when I raised my hand. When all the other white kids would get an answer right, she would always applaud them and give them candy, but when I did, she wouldn't do anything. So one day we had recess, and I was playing with these two white girls, and they started picking on me and making fun of my hair because I was black. So I went to go tell Mrs. Wilson, and she says, so I go to tell my teacher, Mrs. Wilson, and you would not believe what she said to me. So she goes, well, maybe you should try straightening your hair. Kids won't pick on you anymore. Now, I'm in 5th grade, not 1st, so I knew she was racist. But I am in 5th grade, so no lie, it did make me feel kind of bad about my hair. So I go the rest of the day feeling kind of bad, and when I get home, I tell my grandma, like for part 2. This is part 2 story time about how my crazy grandma got my teacher fired. Now, the reason my grandma was there was because my mom was in nursing school and I needed a babysitter. Now, since my grandma is from the racist days, she was not playing with this teacher. I came home and I told my grandma everything that happened and she was pissed. Other incidences have happened and we've called up there and they have done nothing about it. Like I said, a predominantly white and racist school. So my grandma gives me this strange advice and she says, you know, when people don't like you, do something nice for them. Then they will. So my grandma goes in the kitchen and she starts making chocolate chip cookies. I saw this one strange ingredient on the counter and I was like, okay. I asked her if I could have one when they were done, and for the first time she said no. So my grandma told me to bring that batch of cookies to my teacher and have her give her a call to tell her how she likes them. So the next day I bring the cookies to my teacher and she starts to eat on them in class. And like for part 3. Part 3 story time about how my grandma got my teacher fired. So like I said in part 2, I bought the batch of cookies to my teacher, Mrs. Wilson, and she starts to eat on them in class. Now I'm only in 5th grade, so I genuinely just thought my grandma made her a batch of cookies for some reason. So as I'm doing my work, I look up and I notice my teacher's like laying across her desk laughing at her phone in a weird way. So she's acting really weird and goofy. She grabs her phone and calls my grandma. So in the sloppiest, weird way, she tells her how much she loves those cookies. Then she tells our classroom we don't ever have to do homework again, and she's laughing hysterically. She starts taking her shoes off and undoing her hair and running around the classroom just acting crazy. Now, at this time, our door was open, so I'm pretty sure teachers heard. So the principal comes by our room to see what's going on in there. So at this point, my teacher is laying on the ground with no shoes on. My grandma put edibles in the... She was then fired for illegal substances. I had no more problems out of her.